So, Chief Murray, we just want to start by saying thank you so much for spending time with us. We know you're passionate about AFSA. We know it gets you fired up. And we are so honored to be here. We have podcasts, and we're also active duty service members. And our podcasts are focused on making those around us better by sharing stories, by highlighting testimonies, stories of resiliency, of getting through mental health issues. So a lot of the things that, we didn't really put out there and talk about as the Air Force is changing. The conversations are happening, and we're embracing it, and we're creating a space for it. And AFSA saw that, recognized it, and they had invited us out here to interview airmen from all different stages of their career. And so when we saw you come by to say hi, we had to get you to drop in. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Well, tell me a little, and with that, I see UMU. So UMU is what?
It's us mentoring us. So UMU is a social media-based leadership development mentorship platform. So we talk about everything from resiliency to career development, and even things as far as once members are getting ready to retire, preparation for retire. We even talk about real estate investing. We have panel members come on and they talk about what it's like to be a dual military couple. We've had female panels. One of the most interesting things we've done in the last few years was we had a panel of all E9s from across all the services. So Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, and even Coast Guard, and they share their stories. And what we kind of do is collect information, network, and share that information with all our members.
So
yes,
you mentoring you.
Us, yep. So
us mentoring you. All right, super. So not university of some,
No, sir. It's us mentoring us. So us from within.
Us mentoring us. All right,
Yes,
fantastic.
As you know, coming up, there were certain conversations that you weren't necessarily privy to that wasn't being had. So you could be in a certain circle and understand information and get that information.
Right.
However, we're broadcasting it to a bigger platform so that everyone can gain that knowledge and be more mentored.
That is just great because and I certainly hope that it's like when I out there on stage that I come across to airmen with that understanding. That dialogue is so important. Discussion of issues, discussion of various things that are in our society, in our country, that's going on in the force. The things that maybe affect someone's feeling about rank. I mean, because of the announcement about the force structure changes and all. Those things are important to be able to bring out and help people understand so that they can either bring out, and make sure that the right knowledge is there or how people feel about things, there and work through it. But then, of course, I kind of go back also is that, and I do believe it is so important, because of our service of what we do, why we exist, the very purpose that we serve is that we understand things have to be in priorities as well. And if we let, something then over-dominate and take away from that focus on the military readiness aspect, then we're not doing our justice to the purpose of why we serve. But that said, we can't let that purpose or something else be able to overshadow, and that's where we, throughout history and time, sometimes just keep it under the rug, or, let's just not surface an issue or something there because it's not important. Well, it is important there to be able to bring that out. But sometimes it's about where and how and when that you do as well.
Yes, sir.
No, absolutely. That's exactly why we created this space, because it has intent behind it. It's not chaos. It's hearing someone, it's seeing someone, it's giving them the spotlight in a controlled environment. So it's a very effective approach at having that person be seen and heard and hearing their story. And so, I mean, that's why I love, what we do, because it is effective and it is intentional. Because I have seen it the other way, where it's chaotic and people getting all fired up for the wrong reasons and getting it, and there's really no outlet to that. You know what I mean? And so this kind of creates an outlet for those things. And they feel supported, during those conversations. There's a lot of empathy in the conversation. So growing as a force together, these platforms have kind of taken that to the next level. And I know you kind of had something you wanted to ask them about that.
So, and that's going to kind of help us transition into our first question we have for you, Chief. So you talked about on stage that you still maintain a connection to Airmen. So tell me in detail, what does that look like from your perspective on a daily basis? What does it look like for you to be connected with Airmen? How do you keep connected with Airmen?
It comes in multiple ways. You heard Chief Roy talk about the fact that this is a commitment for life. Being the chief, and ultimately that was a part of the conversation that I had to have with my wife when I was nominated to be Chief Master of the Air Force. Not that I thought that at the time that I was going to be, but if it did occur, we need to understand, both of us had to understand, and of course, the fact that she and I have been married longer than I've been in the Air Force, this, just like our commitment of marriage is for life, this is a commitment also to Airmen for life. Paul Airy set that example for us. Every Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force since Paul Airy, in one way or the other, has maintained their commitment, and some very close, with that. These panels here through AFSA, Senior NCO Academy, traveling to bases, being invited, being a guest speaker at things and all. So, one is that aspect of this title that we hold, of the position we held, is a lifetime commitment to our force. The other piece of it, though, is the things that I have chosen in my life after the Air Force is as well. From going to work for Lockheed Martin, a defense contractor, and some people, dirty, rotten contractor, type thing. Well, for me, it was an opportunity to continue to serve because Lockheed Martin is a defense contractor and primarily United States defense contractor. Everything that they do, build, service they provide, and everything, again, is going to the service of this nation. And they gave me an opportunity, and so in many ways I felt like that was a continuation of me to be able to move from nearly 30 years in uniform to not wearing the uniform but still contributing to the defense of our nation. And then where really that comment about staying close to the issues and things today, as the chairman of the board of AFA, the Air and Space Forces Association, our mission in AFA is to promote the dominance of air and space forces as the foundation of national defense, to support our airmen and guardians, and respect our heritage. And we have three elements of that: education, advocacy, and support. I've spent a number of time, over the last 3 years on the Hill, Capitol Hill, visiting with senators and congressmen and advocating on behalf of our airmen and airmen's issues. Most of that is more towards the lines of the resources our airmen need, the funding, the capitalization of aircraft and all, but it also comes down to a reminder again, the importance of the airmen and what airmen and guardians serve in the force, and the fact that we're under-resourced. There's pass-through money that's not recognizing equality, and it's really not even equality, a national defense requirements that come from air and space forces. And so in that regard, I've got to keep myself very close to the issues and how that's affecting our airmen today, what our airmen think about it, the express needs, and that goes from the highest strategic level in keeping a relationship with the Secretary of the Air Force, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, multiple layers of the Air Force, all the way down to younger airmen. So you heard me talk about this Legends Tour that we're doing. And again, you're looking at people no less committed to me, with former General, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Myers, General Jumper, General Robinson, General Newton, Chief Buddy Hutchinson, Chief Finch last week, Chief Tapia, former, Command Chief AATC. He'll be joining me next week in Seymour Johnson,
Awesome.
And then we go. So keeping that connection to kind of the pulse of the force. And then the other is that network with the Chief Master of the Air Force. Chief Bass makes sure that before new announcements are made or that as they're working priorities and issues, she keeps us formers involved. in that. It's that little quip story about Chief McCoy calling him and saying, "Chief, before I announce this decision, I need to let you know." A little respect, a little professional courtesy there. But those are the various things. The Air Force Museum, of course, in Dayton, Ohio, which is the National Museum of the United States Air Force. It's a national treasure. Serving on its foundation board then is keeping that connection. And I would tell you that you need to go visit the museum now and see how we're integrating the enlisted deeper and deeper in those that serve, and where, because it's our mantra, if you will, is telling their stories. It's not just a place to park, different aircraft and satellites and, and rockets and things of that nature. It's really telling the stories of those who served, and we've all heard the stories of the Robin Rands and the Doolittles and Doolittle Raiders, and on there, Curtis LeMay and all. Well, and now you can go and you can read about Airman so-and-so, or you can see the aircraft in Vietnam. I'm sorry, you go back to the Berlin airlift. Many people don't know that many of the airmen that were loading the cargo during the Berlin airlift were African Americans. And yet you just saw their silhouette. The mannequin dressed there in their uniform. Well, now we've researched and we can tell you who they were. We have been able to go back in archives and everything and start telling the story. And why were there so many African Americans with that? And what unit were they at that were doing that? And so now that's, again, I know it's a long answer and it's going around to it. But that's about what I think is important of being informed and staying informed. So it's dealing at the highest levels of issues of the force, all the way to making sure that, and that's what I like about the AF. You said I'm passionate about AFSA, and I am. The Air Force Sergeant Association, been around since 1964, started, by a master sergeant, actually 3 master sergeants there that started this organization. What a great organization in hosting. But yet the same thing, it's passionate about the Air Force Association, or now Air and Space Forces Association, AFA, that's been around longer than the Air Force, and by the way, one of the founding members was Tech Sergeant Woody Vossler, Medal of Honor recipient. A lot of people don't know that AFA's first board of directors had 5 NCOs on the board of directors. People used to think it was an officer association, but we recognize Chief McCoy today. Not only did I walk in his footsteps as Chief Master of the Air Force, he was also the first president and chairman of the board of the association as well, back in 1993 to 1996.
That's amazing.
That's some history.
Yeah.
I love your answer, sir, because you gave us a little bit of why it's important to stay in touch and stay aware of our history and where to get our current events and to stay in touch with the Airmen. Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Hey, I don't know why this just came to me in the moment that I just had to ask you, because I do ask it to a lot of people, but I want to hear your unique answer, sir. And that is, what was your proudest Air Force moment?
Oh, gosh. I haven't had that question before there. And proudest Air Force moment.
So many.
There are so many. I keep a picture on my desk, and again, it's about making sure that I recognize and keep my focus on what's most important in life. When I returned from my second long deployment to from Kuwait in 1996, because Desert Shield, Desert Storm took me out for 7.5 months. And I left 2 young boys at the house with Sherry with 2 young boys. 1996, I was actually had to take and bring and move an A-10 unit, shut down at McCord Air Force Base, moved to Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. We were given 90 days to take a unit from bed down to FOC, full operational capability. That's normally a year to a year and a half process to be able to go IOC, initial operating capability, then full operation capability to make sure you've got all of your resources, you've exercised and prepared. We had 90 days to be able to do that.
Wow.
Because we were given an edict that we were going to be the 4th rotation A-10 unit back into Kuwait to be able to keep Saddam Hussein at bay from reattacking Kuwait after that. That accomplishment was absolutely just incredible to be able to do that. The picture, though, that I mentioned is the fact that my wife was pregnant with our 3rd child through that time period. That deployment went all the way up to her due date, and I took the first, instead of normally what would be the last aircraft out with all of my airmen, the colonel said, "You get on that aircraft, Chief, a C-5, with our first load of equipment back to Moody." And I got back 2 days before my daughter was born, Elizabeth, the baby. All right, now you roll that forward now to the 2nd deployment. That was 94. The 2nd deployment then back out was a 20-hour notice.
Oh,
and in that 20-hour notice, we deployed, packed out, and we spent 5.5 months in Bahrain. Now I'm coming back to that baby that was born right 2 days after the last deployment to be a 2-year-old, and it's the picture of me holding Elizabeth with her holding an American flag on the flight line with me in my DCUs, my desert camouflage uniform there, and what a moment that was, and that is always there, that reminder. Through that is where then taking those experiences, and as I went into the Pentagon post 9/11, but working towards that is to have an Air Force that understood and was having the right priorities of being an expeditionary Air Force. And one of the things we worked hard on there, tempo for airmen, understanding the dynamics of a force that could be deployed on a moment's notice or in preparation of readiness cycles that had to come to be able to give people predictability and everything. So all of those things culminate into the work that I thought was just so valuable back in that time frame. It always comes back to that picture with me and that 2-year-old girl.
I don't want to skip a key leadership thing that happened here. Your commander sending you on that first plane to make sure that you came to see your daughter being born is something that you can't miss, because that's a attribute from a commander that is needed, is warranted, especially in today's Air Force, where we're balancing, our work and family. But to revert back to, staying in touch with the airmen, Chief Gaylor, mentioned him being on Facebook, and we are a social media platform. So one question that I did want to ask you is, as we evolve and we get into that technology age, what is your take on social media being a very big influencer on getting out information to today's Air Force?
My first answer, the response to that is, I'm glad I didn't have social media to deal with when I was Chief Master Sergeant Air Force. Email was enough,
yes,
back then. But it is incredibly important. It's an important platform, if it's used correctly. In my day at Senior NCO Academy, they taught an exercise called the inbox exercise. And it's a valuable lesson for, the use of social media. So you go to work one day and you've got an inbox on your desk, all right? And in that inbox, and it's stacked up very high with, things that have come in. And you need to work that inbox down. All right, and so you start on it and you open the first thing and you look at it and everything. Okay, it's going to require that I've got to get some type of report or something, and I've got to do this. And then the other one's I've got to have to write this paper, and I got to do this. And then you go, and as you go on down, and if you're taking it one at a time from the top down, you fail to recognize that buried in that, down in that inbox is an immediate action requirement by your commander that has to be done and accomplished now. And then if you look through the others, that you find various priorities that if you really take that inbox and you dissected it, through it, is that you would rearrange it from the priorities of absolutely immediate to a very low priority. I can get to it in a week's time. So it's a kind of a roundabout way about your question about, again, how best to be able to use, social media in a means to be able to communicate, and communication goes multiple directions there. But, from the standpoint of a leader using social media, it should not be haphazard. It should not be reactionary. There are means and times to be reactionary at something and comment on something. But if it's depending on the priority of the communication, then should depend on to what extent of thought that goes into that, of timing, and of course anything about communication. I put social media right into the realms of communication like you and I are right now face to face. Who's my audience? That's my question. Who are you? What do you do? I need to know my audience before I start communicating with my audience and being able to dialogue with that. And so no different in social media. Who's my audience? Who is going to see this? Who do I want to take and send this to, but then who else is going to be out there, and how are they going to receive it? And then, oh, by the way, when they start, communicating back and I start getting feedback, how am I going to react to it depending on who they are? Leaders trip across that all the time, and trip across and make mistakes in that by not taking and working with that. But the importance of it is absolutely incredible. It's a matter, though, of how and when, to be able to use it in that way. Whether it's Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, all of those.
You sound versed.
There are.
Yeah, you got a lot of them right there. You hit on a lot of them.
So that's kind of my view. Absolutely incredibly important. And information. And one of the things today, that you have, all of us have, but especially youngsters like yourself, are so adept to using the tools of communication today. For me, it's pretty amazing that I can Google something and I look at a YouTube video. I can do about anything now, and I often use it. Man, I had the Dewey Decimal System and the card catalog system. I had to go to the library and research and pull a book, and it took time to do that. And now it's instantaneous to be able to get information and use information there. So I think it's absolutely incredibly important, but it is in some ways, from a communication, a tool to be used, and one should know how to use that tool before they really start using it. But the elements of communication, knowing your audience, knowing what your message is, how to get it across, all of those things, nothing has changed on that. It's just the medium or media that we use is a different means today.
Definitely, it's almost like we need some mentorship, focused on that for the folks that come behind us, just the importance, and how words are powerful and it's permanent. And yeah, that is going to be a part of mentorship, and part of our approach and our advice and our lessons learned. It's just kind of wild to think that we'd be talking about social media to airmen one day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The context in what someone's saying is very important. The deciphering, how the person receives the message, is something that you got to think about.
Absolutely. Not only content, but you're exactly right. Context as well. Ours was in the day, and it's still no change today. If you're going to write an email to someone, and it could be perceived with emotionally, then you better think twice, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times. And in fact, a lesson I learned on that a long time ago is write it and stick it in the whole file, and then come back and look at it the next day. Maybe come back and look at it the next day, and I've had many over the years that I've not sent, or that I've recrafted, right, because of the fact that, oh my gosh, I could be sending the wrong message Not it's because now it's not the words, it's how it can be perceived and how it makes someone feel.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. No, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so we got time for one more question. So I'm going to hit you with an AFSA-focused question, given that we're at this awesome event.
Right.
And so our last question here for you, Chief, is there's a lot of new airmen here. Their minds are blown being here, seeing everyone. Heck, my mind is blown. I've been in it 18 years. I'm still blown away by seeing all the leaders come together. It's a beautiful thing. But my question to you is, for those new airmen that are here, you and where you're sitting, what do you hope those new airmen are getting out of this experience?
First and foremost, that I want and I would like for all young airmen to realize, and it was said on stage earlier, but to recognize what they are doing and how important what they're doing is greater than themselves individually. And that collectively, working together as a team, that they can accomplish so much more. They're building relationships, they're building capabilities, they're being able to fulfill those mission requirements, but it really comes down, and this was one of the things that I kind of missed, early on, even being as committed, and I was a gung-ho, young airman. I mean, it was out there and it was make it happen and everything, and I wanted to be the best I could be. I wanted to be the best, airman. I wanted to be the best crew chief I could be. But when it come time to re-enlist in the force, I mean, do I really want to stay? How do I look at this or anything? And it was still too much about me. And it was not about what I'm doing and for the purpose that I'm doing it. And that evolves over time. There. And but the value, and then it comes back down to, in every way, believe and understand just how important what they do is in service to our nation. And then it doesn't matter to me if they serve 4 years, 10 years, 30 or 40 years. That understanding. I mean, I don't want any airman to leave our ranks and not understand just how important it was to be able to serve our nation. Of course, a lot of people, and I hear it, and I was told this yesterday on the airplane, and y'all have heard it too. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And most people really are sincere about that. But the humility portion of it is that, and that airman to be take, I served because it was important for me to do so, and what I did was important. It does, but many people serve in many aspects and everything. But I think when people, and that's the things I look from a resiliency, and you talked about resiliency. When airmen can start, moving that in the simple answer is service before self, but it is, in a sense, is that what I do is valuable, and what I do is valued by other people, and working together with other people and collectively together then makes us all better. And that helps in those aspects of resiliency and those times maybe of a little depression or those family strifes or financial issues and everything, and then, mine also comes from a spiritual background aspect of it too. I serve, someone bigger than me. And so I take it not only country, so it's that God, country, family, God and country is the fact, knowing that I serve, a purpose but there's somebody bigger than me out there. There's something bigger than me out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I hope that.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful. And one big thing that's important to all of us, because I've been talking to people all day since I've been here, and purpose gets brought up time and time again. And I think we don't ever want to lose that purpose. That's what brings you back. That's why you're still with our family all these years later. It's that purpose that fuels us. And so I think that's what a lot of the airmen are getting out of it. Maybe they haven't found that purpose yet. maybe they're just now seeing it here. So I think it's a beautiful thing. I think you said it beautifully. Thank you so much, Chief, for your time. We are so honored to have you here. Honored that you would take the time with this social media influencer initiative that we're trying to start here to bring us closer together. And we just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. So thank you.
Well, the thanks goes back. Thank y'all. Thanks for what you're doing, here to make a difference. That's just so positive. I've come away inspired, and mine is that learn something every day, and I just learned something here being with y'all, and the fact of what you are seeing your purpose and being able, because that point about purpose, you can find your purpose in so many different ways. There's the greater purpose, of course. I mean, you can really expand this out. Or you can come to that simple piece of just what's my mission for the unit. It was a big thing for me back in the day to produce an X amount of sorties, or my aircraft could fly 4 times a day, not 1 time and break. How could I get that thing turned? I mean, so purposes can be boiled down to just simple, types of things, to expanding to the much larger. And so thank you for that comment and for what y'all are seeing the purpose of what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. All right. Yes, we appreciate you, and for everyone that's listening, this was Chief Murray with UMU and Hero Front at AFSA 2022. Thanks, everybody.